The blizzard howled like a wounded beast, snow blinding the highway and icing up every soul on the road. Most folks were already home, but not Jake. Not the mechanic who hadn't eaten a full meal in 3 days. So when he saw a black luxury SUV stranded on the shoulder, steam hissing from under the hood, he didn't think twice. He grabbed his tools, pulled over and walked straight into the storm, never imagining that the woman inside would flip his world upside down by sunrise. Jake Collier wasn't supposed to be on that highway. He was supposed to be home, warming, his sore hands in front of his broken heater, chewing on the last packet of instant noodles he had left for the week. But the overtime at Jenkins's auto shop had dragged into the night, and the 20-mile ride back to his rundown trailer wasn't optional if he wanted to be there for his son in the morning. The snow was brutal, visibility near zero. Even the plow trucks had vanished, but Jake's old Chevy pickup clung to the road like it had something to prove. That's when he saw it, hazard lights blinking weakly through the whiteout. A black Range Rover, sleek and far too polished for this weather, sat slanted against the shoulder like it had given up on life. Jake pulled over. "Come on, man," he muttered, grabbing his tool bag from the back seat. "You're not that guy. You don't just leave people stranded." The door creaked open as he stepped out into the snowstorm. His boots sank deep with every step, the wind slicing through his flannel like a blade. When he knocked on the window, it rolled down halfway. Inside sat a woman, early 30s maybe, pale skin, high cheekbones, dark red coat clutched around her like armor. Her breath came out in tight, scared puffs. Eyes like winter glass. Rich, sure, but scared. "You all right, Ma'am?" Jake asked. She stared. I think the engine overheated. And my phone? No signal." Jake nodded. "Pop the hood. I'll take a look." "You're a mechanic," who gave her a tired smile. "On a good day." He didn't ask for money, didn't expect a thank you, he just got to work. The hood lifted with a hiss. Steam burst upward, fogging his face. Jake worked fast, though his fingers were nearly frozen. Coolant leak, busted hose. Something she wouldn't have survived out here alone with. She watched him from the window, her hands gripping the steering wheel, as if trying to stay grounded. "Can I at least give you something for this?" she asked when he finished, kneeling in the snow to tighten one last clamp. Jake stood up, wiping his hands on his jeans. "You don't owe me anything, lady. Just be safe, all right?" Then he turned to walk away. She didn't know his name. He didn't know hers, and still, what she did next shattered everything he thought he knew about people like her. "Wait!" Her voice cut through the wind like a wire, sharp and full of something Jake couldn't quite place, urgency or desperation. He paused halfway back to his truck, turned. She stepped out of the SUV, boots crunching in the snow, arms tight around her chest. The storm howled, but her eyes locked onto his like she wasn't even cold anymore. "You didn't even tell me your name." Jake tilted his head, a little confused. "Does it matter?" "It does to me," he sighed. Jake Collier." She stepped closer. "I'm Rowan Lancaster." That name tickled something in the back of Jake's memory, but he shook it off. "Nice to meet you, Rowan. You should get going. Road's gonna ice worse." But she didn't move. "Can I buy you dinner?" Jake blinked. "You're out here with a busted engine and you're offering me dinner?" Rowan gave a tight smile. "I owe you that much, please." Jake hesitated. He had $20 to last the next 5 days. His stomach was aching, and something in her voice, it wasn't just politeness, it was human. He nodded. "All right, but I'm picking the diner. I'm not dressed for fancy." Inside the diner, heat, coffee, and questions. They sat across from each other in a worn-down booth at Maggie's diner. Jake nursed a coffee like it was medicine. Rowan looked strangely at home, despite the peeling linoleum and flickering neon. "Own signs." She watched him eat like she hadn't seen someone eat in weeks. His hands were rough, stained with grease, fingers cracked from cold. Her eyes flicked to his worn boots, then back to his face. You live around here? 15 miles west. Trailer on Old Pine Road. Got a son, Liam, 7 years old, lives with me. Wife bailed 4 years ago. Haven't had a full day off since. Rowan was quiet. You fixed my car like it was nothing. I do this every day, just not usually in a snowstorm. She leaned in slightly. You didn't ask what I do. Jake shrugged. Didn't seem polite. I own Lancaster Innovations. Jake froze, mid-bite. He'd heard that name, TV, newspapers, big tech expos. You're that Lancaster? She nodded slowly. Yeah, but tonight, I'm just a woman who got stuck in a storm and you were the only one who stopped. Jake exhaled. Guess that makes you lucky. She looked him dead in the eyes. No, Jake, that makes you the rare one. The offerers, they left the diner. The wind had calmed. Snowflakes drifted gently now. Rowan stopped just before reaching her SUV. Can I ask you something crazy? He turned. What would you do with a chance? A real one, no strings attached. Let me help you. Jake's guard shot up. I didn't do this for charity. I know, that's exactly why I want to. She paused. Come to New York. Let me show you something. 1 week. That's all I ask. If nothing else, you'll get a free trip and a warm hotel bed. Jake looked up at the sky, then at her. This your way of paying it forward? She nodded. Jake sighed. I don't trust rich folks. I don't blame you. She smiled softly. But maybe trust me. He stared at her, jaw tight. And then he nodded. By the time he got home, Rowan's assistant had already booked him a flight, and what waited in New York would tear open every wound he'd buried, test every ounce of his pride, and hand him a future more dangerous and more powerful than anything he could have imagined. Jake had never flown before. The jet was private, sleek, silent. It made him uncomfortable the moment he stepped inside, like touching something that didn't belong to him. The pilot greeted him by name. Rowan's assistant offered him coffee, like he was a VIP. Jake gripped the armrests the entire flight, jaw tight, heart hammering. Not from fear of flying, but because deep down, something told him his life was already changing. And he wasn't. Sure, he wanted it to. He thought about his son, Liam, staying with the neighbor, about the bills stacked on the table back home, about how his phone buzzed earlier with a final notice on his truck loan. And now he was flying toward skyscrapers and glass towers with a woman who could probably buy his entire town and not notice. The office in the sky Rowan met him at the rooftop of a chrome-clad building in downtown Manhattan. She wasn't in a coat this time. She was in black slacks, a fitted white blouse, and heels sharp enough to kill. But her smile was the same. Come with me, she said, leading him through glass. Doors into what looked like a cross between a tech lab and a palace. People stared, not with disgust, but with curiosity. Who was the bearded man in a flannel, worn-out boots and calloused hands walking beside their CEO? Rowan led him into a room filled with machines, some half-assembled, others flickering with interface screens and futuristic blueprints. This, she said, is Project Ember. It's a clean energy initiative. We've been struggling with the engineering for months. Jake raised an eyebrow. You brought me here for that. You fixed my car in a storm using scrap tools, no lab, and no diagnostics. You think differently. I want to see what you notice. Jake walked up to one of the machines. He didn't say anything for a full minute. Then your intake valve's too narrow for that current. You're restricting flow. The conversion won't stabilize. That's why your output's erratic. The engineers in the room went silent. Rowan's eyes lit up. Do you think you can fix it? I can try. 1 week turned into 10 days. Jake worked in the lab every day, 12 hours. Dirty jeans and oil-stained fingers, among people with PhDs and designer watches. But he earned their respect. He didn't just fix things, he understood them. He simplified what others overcomplicated. Rowan watched him closely. But it wasn't just admiration, it was something else. One night, While they walked the terrace overlooking the skyline, she said softly, "I've spent years around people who say the right things but don't do the right things." "You're the opposite," Jake looked at her. "That a compliment?" She nodded. "The biggest one I've ever given." The secret behind her eyes, it was on the 11th night that things shifted. Jake had just stepped out of the lab jacket, over his shoulder, ready to call Liam before bed. He found Rowan sitting alone in her office, staring out the window. "You all right?" he asked. She didn't look at him. "My dad built this company. He died last year. Everyone expected me to fail. They still do." Jake stepped inside slowly. "They see a woman running a tech empire and assume I got it handed to me. But the truth is, I've fought every damn inch to be here. Alone." Her voice cracked slightly. Jake sat down across from her. "You're not alone. Not anymore." That silence between them, it wasn't awkward. It was safe, and for the first time in her life, Rowan Lancaster didn't feel like a billionaire. She felt human. But kindness comes at a cost. 2 days later, the headlines broke. "Rowan Lancaster involved with mechanic. Board questions her judgment." Photos, rumors, boardroom whispers. Jake found her staring at the screen, hands clenched. "I knew they'd come for me," she whispered. "I just didn't think they'd come for you." Jake looked at the screen, then at her. "What do we do now?" Her voice was cold steel. "We fight back, but the cost would be higher than either of them expected, because kindness had brought them together. And now, jealousy, greed, and power would try to tear them apart." Jake didn't care what people said about him. He'd been poor too long to care about whispers. But when he saw Rowan, the woman who once stood in a snowstorm and looked lost, being ripped apart by her own board, something inside him snapped. He stood behind her at the emergency board meeting, arms crossed, watching men in suits try to shred her reputation with polite words and poisonous smiles. "This relationship compromises the integrity of your leadership," one man sneered. "You brought in an unqualified outsider, paraded him through our innovation lab, and now the press is eating it alive." "Rowan, this is bad for business." Jake wanted to speak, but Rowan stood up first. Her voice was calm, too calm. "Jake's fixes increased our prototype stability by 43%. Our investors are thrilled. But the problem here isn't Jake. It's your discomfort with the fact that someone without a degree, without your pedigree, came in and outperformed your golden boys." Silence. "If you want to vote me out," she said, stepping forward, "go ahead. But be ready to explain to the world why you destroyed the company's future to protect your pride." The room went still. No one voted. But Rowan knew. This wasn't over. It was just the beginning. Jake's past comes back 2 nights later. Jake got a call from his ex-wife. "Nice to see you all over the news, Jake. Your son's classmates saw it. One of the mums even asked if he's gonna start wearing designer clothes now." "Funny, huh?" Jake's knuckles whitened around the phone. "Liam's being teased. People are saying you're some sugar baby to a billionaire. You want that for your son." He ended the call before he said something he'd regret, but the words haunted him. He thought about leaving. That night, Jake stood on the hotel balcony, staring out at the city. Rowan walked up quietly behind him. "You want to go home, don't you?" Jake didn't answer at first. "Liam's being bullied. My name's in tabloids next to yours. I didn't ask for this." "I know," she said softly. "Neither did I." He turned to her. "This your life, always trying to prove you're not what they say you are?" Her eyes shimmered. "Every damn day." He looked away. "I'm not built for this." "Then don't run from it," she said, stepping closer. "Change it." The betrayal. The next morning, Jake woke to flashing lights and shouts outside the hotel. Paparazzi, reporters. He turned on the news. The headlines screamed, "Mechanic turns millionaire overnight. Lancaster named him new chief engineer." Boardroom coup rumors surface. Jake hadn't even been told. He stormed into Rowan's office. "What the hell is this?" Rowan looked shocked. "I didn't authorize that." "Then who did?" She stared at the screen. Her face went pale. "There's someone leaking from inside." And that's when it hit her. Someone from the board wanted Jake destroyed because they knew Rowan trusted him, loved him, even if she couldn't say it yet. They were trying to turn him into a scandal, and it was working. Jake leaves that night. Jake packed his bag, left a note at the front desk, took a train out of the city without telling Rowan. He didn't belong here. He didn't belong in boardrooms or billion-dollar tech projects. He belonged under cars, with tools in his hands, grease on his arms, and Liam's laughter in his ears. Rowan called, texted. No answer. He disappeared. Back home, Jake returned to his old life. The trailer, the auto shop, the silence, but it didn't feel the same. His heart wasn't here anymore, and Liam had started to ask, "When's the lady from the city calling again?" Jake would just shake his head. "She's busy, bud." But every night, he'd stare at the ceiling and wonder, why did I walk away from the one person who saw me, not as a broken man, but as something more? Then came the knock. 3 weeks later, during the first snow since that night on the highway, there was a knock on the shop door. Jake opened it. There she stood, Rowan, hair soaked in snow, cheeks flushed, no guards, no SUV, just her. She looked up at him and said, "I didn't come here for forgiveness. I came to tell you the truth." And what she revealed would not only change Jake's life, but force him to confront the very pain he thought he'd buried for good. Jake didn't say anything at first. He just stared at her. Rowan Lancaster, the billionaire, standing in a snow-covered parking lot outside his busted-up shop in a town. The world forgot. Her boots were soaked, her coat barely fighting the wind. But her eyes, they were steady. "Can I come in?" she asked. Jake stepped aside. Inside, it smelled like old oil, metal shavings, and a faint hint of burnt coffee. Rowan didn't seem to mind. She walked slowly, hands in her pockets, eyes scanning the room like she was memorizing the way Jake lived. "You look like hell," Jake said finally. "You should see the boardroom," she replied with a weak smile. "It's worse." Jake leaned against the workbench. "Why are you here, Rowan?" She took a breath. "Because I should have told you sooner. Everything. About why I asked you to come to New York. About the storm. About what I was running it from." Jake frowned. "You mean the broken-down car?" She looked up. "It wasn't just a car, Jake. That night, I wasn't just stranded. I was leaving the city, walking away. I'd just resigned. Walked out of a meeting after they told me I wasn't cold enough to lead the company." Jake's eyes narrowed. "I sat in that SUV for hours, trying to decide if I should disappear, and then you showed up, in the storm. No questions, no judgment. You didn't even know who I was, but you treated me like I mattered." Jake was quiet for a long moment. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I was afraid you'd see me like everyone else does, just another rich girl trying to fix her mistakes with money." His voice softened. "That's not how I saw you." She stepped closer. "I know. That's why it scared me." Redemption and resolve. Rowan sat down on the edge of a tool chest. "The board's pushing me out. They're calling it a leadership transition. But I'm not going quietly." Jake raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "I'm building something new, a division outside their control. Clean tech, accessible repairs, affordable conversions for rural areas. I want you to run it with me." Jake blinked. "You want me to help you build a company?" She nodded. "I want someone who understands the people we're trying to help. Someone who remembers what it's like to choose between gas and groceries. I want someone who doesn't need a suit to be brilliant." Jake looked down. His hands were covered in grime. His shirt had a rip in the sleeve. He thought about Liam, about the kind of world his boy deserved, about the second chance most men never got. "You sure you want me?" Rowan smiled. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." The grand opening. 8 months later. The ribbon was cut in a small Missouri town that no one had bothered to invest in for decades. A brand new facility gleamed in the sunlight. Lancaster Collier Innovations engraved in steel on the front. Jake stood beside Rowan, now in a crisp button-up, grease still under his nails. Liam was at his side, proudly holding his hand. Reporters asked questions. Investors hovered. But Jake only cared about the kids who walked past the gates, eyes wide at the new training center inside. This wasn't just business. It was change. The proposal that shocked the crowd at the end of the ceremony, as people began to clap and drift toward the refreshments, Rowan stepped forward and tapped her champagne glass. "Before you all go," she said, "there's one last thing." Jake turned toward her, confused. She looked at him, eyes fierce and tender all at once. "You once told me you didn't belong in my world," she said softly. "But the truth is, I didn't feel like I belonged in it either. Not until I met you. Then..." She knelt, pulled a ring from her pocket, and the crowd gasped. Liam's mouth dropped open. "Jake Collier," Rowan said, her voice trembling, "you saved me in a storm. You challenged me, stood by me, believed in me when I didn't. Will you marry me?" Jake was speechless. For once, the man who could fix anything had no words. Then he laughed, a deep, surprised, emotional laugh. "You're damn lucky," I said. "Yes to that diner." He knelt, wrapped his arms around her, and whispered, "Yes." The crowd erupted in cheers. But all Jake heard was her heartbeat against his. In a world that measured worth by wealth, Jake reminded people that kindness is still currency, that a man with nothing can give everything, and that sometimes the storm we walk into is the one that sets us free.